Hi everybody, today I'm going to be talking about Eleanor Antin. She was born February 27th, 1935 in Bronx, New York. Antin is an American performance artist, filmmaker, installation artist, conceptual artist, and a feminine artist. She was also a professor at the University of California at Irvine and the University of California at San Diego. Alright, I'm going to start this off with a quote she says, where she says, essentially, I invent histories, and through artwork, this is in fact what she does. In her artwork, we form a empathetic bond with the characters and in turn make our own histories, encouraging us to find our place in them. Um, since histories of the past determine how power is distributed and how we understand the now and the present, we must be aware of our role in the making and telling of history. I mean, after all, history is just a thing of, memory and thought. Also, history is based on experienced events that are told by individuals. However, historian Hayden White says that histories are also fictions that are sometimes over-exaggerated with assumptions and projections, and to make it compelling. So he thinks that all art is narrated from a subjective point of enunciation. And White also thinks that the art world has repeated a structure that identifies the artist as the unified and singular origin for the meaning and value of the artwork, and says that the art making and interpretation are autobiographical, meaning that the artist knows what it means only. However, Antin thinks otherwise, and in her eyes, history is just an accumulation of previous reports, and according to her, this is the problem. Basically, and an example of what she thinks is the problem is how history can be an accumulation of reports is the Facebook timeline. The timeline basically goes through everything you've done in your past on Facebook. Like throughout the whole thing, basically anything you've posted and said, and as Antin said, it's like a pile of your life. Basically, it's just a previous report of yourself. And this is what she doesn't like about history. She also thinks that history is theatrical. She questions the knowability of history. She also pokes fun at the past and how histories are fabricated and not fixed. Also thinking that history is self-enacting. Basically, if you go back and reenact your history. And according to Antin, you have to enact history to really understand it and understand yourself. And in doing so, you represent a new history to your previous one. Which this brings me to the answer, or what Antin believes is the answer to get away from the history she doesn't like. And that is that there are links between artist, artwork, institutional, representational context, and the interpreter. The way to see this happen is by activating what she calls the self. Now, you may be wondering what the self is. And Amelia Jones, the writer of the article, says that the self comes into being through acts of enunciation and posing, and it's captured, reflected, and projected upon by others who engage it. And also, Antin also says that the self is an accumulation of reports also, but the accumulation of reports is what becomes the writings of history, and it's a paradox. And by this she means that the self is also what everyone takes from it in the artwork. And I said earlier, it's captured, reflected, projected upon by the people who engage it. Basically, all the other people that find the meaning of it, not just the artist. The self repeats its own history, and it's a history that is open to and contingent on the environment and its interpersonal engagements. So basically, when you reenact your history, it changes based upon who you enact it with, or who you interact with, and your environment that you interact with. Amelia Jones also says that the self makes, engages, and has a history. The self is both subjective and objective of the images and stories that constitute its position in the world. And Antin has performed the self in many of her previous artworks. Antin tries to relate her artwork to the real, and she describes the real by saying, maybe you can find the real, which isn't so different from the truth. It isn't solid like stone. You glimpse it for a minute before it slips away like air. And her work is obviously fake, but she is trying to make it real. And when she tries to make her artwork relate to the real, and it acts out the representations, she poses a question, can you ever recapture the real? And can it ever be true to what actually happened in the past? So when she reenacts the history, she tries to make it as real as she can make it. It could be fake, but she tries to also make it very real. She embraces theatricality and simulation in her images and installations. This brings us back to the fact that she thinks you must self-enact history, and by doing that, it's really theatrical. She wants you to question the knowability of histories and engage with the history. She also uses allegory in her artwork, and allegory is not only states something, but it's an extension of metaphors carrying over from one register of sense to another. And uses this in her artwork, giving them an obviously false feeling while making claims to a metaphorical truth. So basically in her artworks they're fake, but she's trying to make them as real as possible. Antin is saying that for a piece of work to capture the real, to really feel real instead of fake, it must not give up the possibility of telling stories that have productive and collective kinds of meaning and value in them. And she photographic allegory is really perfect for her because a lot of her artwork are photographs, and it helps her get a point across. And because it also requires both the self-conscious collaboration of an audience and a common ground. So basically, once you get the self and you get people to enact in it, it really becomes more real than fake. And Eleanor Antin, she certainly is a time traveler, especially with her pieces of work. And I'm gonna end it with a quote by Amelia Jones. She says, "Antin always engages the past by flirting with the fake. There is no level on which we engage these characters of these photographs as authentic, and yet by flirting with the fake, Antin does not convey a message of despair or hopelessness, nor does she deflect from the importance of engaging with histories both individually and collectively." And if I can give you guys one thing to take from this, is that she really thinks that if you reenact your history, you can make new histories, basically. And she's trying to get away from history just being an accumulation of things of what you're just told. So by activating the self, you can create new histories from your previous ones. Thank you.